Hi, soft speaker Lynne here, also known as your children's fairy godmother. I'm continuing the book Aschenputtel by Carolyn Emerick, and her books may be found on Amazon. She has a series of books on fairy tales, and this is one of them. Um, Today I'm reading about, it's chapter 4, Animistic Ancestor Veneration, and this book answers questions for many of us who want to know. Why do people talk the way they do about how they cope with losing a loved one? Christians and non-Christians alike use some of the same language to describe how they cope. So this will explain why. It goes way back. This chapter is about 5 pages long, and I'll show pictures. There's lots of pictures too. The discussion in the preceding chapter was essential to present in order to understand the relationship between ancestor worship and the land of wits. H.R. Ellis Davidson, a leading scholar in the field of Norse mythology, asserts in her book, Myths and Symbols in Pagan Europe, that the evidence indicates that worship of the ancestors can probably not be clearly separated from that of land spirits. Page 121 to 122. This is down to the fluidity of the belief outlined in the previous chapter. So check out that chapter if you haven't watched it already. Might want to watch that before this one. It's up to you. In earlier volumes of this series, we explored the evolution of history to legend, to myth, and mythology, then moving into the territory of folklore. Human kings and warriors of great renown had their stories told and retold over the ages until they drifted into legend. Sometimes these great kings' remembrances merged into the mythological paradigm. In other words, separate figures can shift and merge into one. Likewise, one figure can split and diverge into two distinct figures. An example of the former is possibly the Germanic God Odin. It is theorized by some that he was a real historical king or chieftain, possibly the leader who led the great migration of Indo-European Aryans into northwestern Europe. The veneration of kings and heroes is related to ancestor worship because a great warrior or beloved king would have been thought of as an ancestor to the entire tribe. And in fact, we do know from accounts by visitors to the heathen temple at Uppsala, Sweden, that real people who were great heroes of renown within their tribe were worshipped alongside the gods of the Teutons. However, as such a figure carries over generations to centuries to millennia, the figure is wont to shift, bend, and take on more mystical attributes, possibly even merging with the more primitive earthy deities. While gods and heroes were worshipped by the community together, individuals and families honored the spirits of their departed ancestors in their own homes. In fact, another way that ancestor veneration is tied to animism is through fairy lore. Most people today are not aware that fairy lore actually originated in the murky haze of Neolithic ancestor veneration. The Germanic word elf is cognate to Norse alfar. We know that the alfar were at one time considered spirits who inhabited burial mounds, i.e., the spirit of a departed ancestor. In the Norse tradition, the alfar became male guardians of the homestead upon which they were buried. This eventually evolved into the house elf, belief found in the Germanic lore from lowland Scotland to Scandinavia to Germany. Here's a picture of Brunhild kneeling at his feet by Ferdinand Leek. I'm not sure if this is Odin or who it is. Looks like she's imploring him for protection as he goes out into war, or to be safe. I don't know whether she's his mate. And here's another one, illustration by Edmund Dulac. Similarly, although the word fairy evolved from French, it is most often used to describe the Irish Sidhe. That's Sidhe. Like the Norse Alfar, the Sidhe were also mound spirits of the departed. Eventually, the word fairy would be used for all manner of spirits interchangeably. The Northern European peoples were heavily rooted in a spirituality that was tied to both their own blood through their ancestors and to the soil upon which they lived, through respect and veneration for the spirits of nature. Like Native Americans, indigenous Europeans also believed very strongly in reading signs in nature as omens and messages from the spirit realm. Teutonic people believed that death was not the end of the spirit of the individual, and that the dead soul could and did communicate and even intervene in the lives of their descendants. Spirits, it was believed, would come back in the form of an animal or send messages through animals. As we shall see in Grimm's Aschenputtel, the spirit of Cinderella's dead mother appears to her in the form of a dove. This seems quite different from the Disney version, which is based on Charles Perrault's version. Again, it must be reiterated that there is no original version. The story of Cinderella is so ancient that it was told and retold over vast distances and immense periods of time. So there is wide variation to the tale. However, the motive of the protagonist's dead mother appearing to her as an animal is common in many of the variations. There is a Scottish variant called Rushen-Coty. That's R-U-S as in Sam, H-E-N. Rushen-Coty, which follows this motif, and the animal through which the girl's mother comes to her is a red calf. This may also speak to the notion of an ancient sacred cow in early Aryan cultures, as we still see among India's Hindus today, in that there are examples of supernatural red cows with relationship to the gods in Celtic myth. The mother's spirit as animal motive is found in many different European variants to the Cinderella tale. It is interesting to note that the profoundness of collective cultural unconsciousness when we compare these ancient motifs with certain customs still popular today. How synchronistic that just today I happened to see a friend post an image on social media of a tree that her family had dedicated to her recently departed brother. While visiting this sacred tree, a cardinal landed at the foot of it and lingered for some time while the family was there. In the comment section, other people remarked that birds are messengers and symbols from the spirits of loved ones on the other side. Essentially, I witnessed virtually the same experience described in Grimm's Aschenputtel being enacted among people today. Here's The Lady Clare by John William Waterhouse. It's a white doe, a white deer or doe, but I don't know. We don't have a picture of red calf. One more page. Yet another friend recently experienced something similar regarding the loss of her beloved grandmother, only the animal was a butterfly. I had a similar experience after the loss of my grandmother, and the animal shown to me was a baby rabbit. In all instances, the people involved had an innate knowing of the event was innate knowing that the event was spiritually connected to their recently deceased relative. In addition to planting trees in dedication to loved ones who have departed, we also see quite a lot of folk imagery today in other beliefs pertaining to our lost loved ones, such as an idea that the spirits of close relatives can become guardian angels to their descendants. While the term guardian angel is from a Christian lexicon, the idea that our dead relative becomes your guardian angel has no basis whatsoever in biblical scripture. This is again one of these religiously contradictory beliefs that has lived on in our consciousness, and even sometimes among very devout Christians, without the understanding that it stems directly from our indigenous pagan past. Thank you. I hope that answered some questions for you, because as conversations go, that comes up in the conversation quite often. So stay tuned. There's one more shorter chapter that I'll be streaming very shortly. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.